gentlemen, welcome to Apple One-to-One. We're so glad you are here today. Our first podcast episode since our name change. If you did click on Think Different Podcast and you see the word Apple One-to-One pop up, that is because we did a name change. On our YouTube channel, we did a big reveal about that. And going forward, we are Apple One-to-One because we're all about the training. As much as we love doing the podcast version of the show, times have changed, and plus, the revenue's all in the YouTube. Let's just face it, folks. But we do want you to like and subscribe. Subscribe to our Apple One-to-One channel. We are the number one place to go to for trading, especially when it comes to Apple numbers, because we have the best video. That's just the reality of it. And please give us a like. It really does help us grow, so we really do appreciate it. We're just two former Apple employees, just talking about Apple, but also giving you guys a lot of knowledge in the Apple world. My name is Will, of course, always here as a former Apple specialist and creator, but of course, here with me, as always, is the Apple creator, retired book publisher, soccer mom recorder, Jurassic Park owner, the black coffee drinker, juror number 12, retirement home president, the keto trout drummer. He loves his snare. Mr. Frank Funk is here.
Hey, it's really this is an exciting one, man. There's a lot of good stuff going to go.
Well, there's a lot of unexpected stuff, but we're going to talk a little detail about that. So let's just jump right into it. Apple came out with an announcement on Tuesday. Actually, I'm sorry. Apple came out on Tuesday. I'm thinking, you know what? MLK Day really messed up my week. So Apple came out with an announcement on Tuesday with two new devices that Apple has released. It is the Mac Mini has been revamped, and the 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro has been revamped, adding the M2 chip into it. But not only the M2, but they added a Pro model into the Mac Mini, and obviously the 14 and 16-inch already had a Pro and Max model. They just now have the M2 version in there, and that was the big announcement. We're going to break it down a little bit about the Mac Mini. So first, Frank, I know you just bought a Mac Studio. And yeah. I immediately thought of you right away about this. Like, I wonder what if Frank would have waited when he went with. Would you have gone with a Mac Mini based on what the specs were? Do you think you would have gone with a Mac Mini at the end of the day?
Probably.
Really? Probably. Okay, so that's interesting. Why would you say that?
Well, because I probably could have gotten the internal larger hard drive and less money. Not that I dislike the Studio, but, you always have to be conscious of the budget.
Of course. You don't have a budget. You are a millionaire. What are you talking about? This guy's retired. He just spends money now. He doesn't even make money except in stocks, which that's not happening right now. So I can see how you're being a little
listen, you can make money on a down market. You just got to know what to do.
If you're growing in the backyard, Frank, and selling it to those people on the streets, I get it. That's fine. We're going to just compare a little bit about the new pricing. And the biggest thing, I think, was the Mac Mini pricing was a big deal. It went down $100 to $599 with an 8 and 10 core GPU with 8 gigs of memory, 256 storage. The outside of the Mac Mini really has not changed, except for one model, which we'll talk about in a second. But the $599 price, Frank, what do you think of that pricing? I mean, this is what personally I could tell you what I thought right away is I knew at some point this was going to happen because Apple's creating their own chips, and what they're doing is they are changing the game, but not only with the chips they're making, but now they're able to price match it perfectly for users. I mean, $599 for a Mac is a very unheard of price.
The $599 is a great entry-level price. Now, just keep in mind that you still have to have another monitor and keyboard and mouse, but those are all over the. You can get moderately priced ones. Depends on how much money you want to spend, but that is certainly a great entry level price for what you get. 10 core, 8 core CPU, 10 core GPU, 8 gig of memory. That's probably something I would beef up. I'd want to go with maybe 16.
Right. But you also create music. So if we were to take the music person, let's go to my wife, who really just looks at it for her photos and all that. And we do use iCloud, so that does help with the storage problem. But still, 256, unless you're using external drives, I don't see that. And that's where maybe you could run a lot of external storages. You're not going to really get used to it. In fact, during the advertising of the M2, if you go watch their video, they took this to a small business, and that's why I think that aims the main thing that the M2 is aimed for that. But they did come out with an M2 Pro. This is the first time a Pro or Max chip is inside of the Mac Mini. What that does is it increases the amount of Thunderbolt ports on the back to 4. So that means you are allowed to do more displays because of that.
Yeah, well, I would think of this unit in a small business as a desktop unit, and then all of your external drives, you could either do that on the network to map all of your files to network drives, not to the drive in the unit itself. So it would be ideal for that, and or you can plug in, you can get a SSD drive for $200, terabyte, right. 2 terabytes. So
and let's max this thing out. So I went up to the highest amount, which is a 12-core CPU, 19-core GPU, 16-core neural engine with 32 gigs of unified memory, 8 terabytes of SSD storage, and 10 gigabit Ethernet. What is the final total, Frank, of that machine?
Oh, and you
take a guess. Just take a guess. Just take a guess, real quick.
$2,000.
Okay, it's $4,499.
Whoa!
You got to remember, you're adding 8 terabytes of storage. You're going from 512 to 8 terabytes, which is $2,400 alone. Okay, so you got a little higher, Frank. But for $4,499, I really hope at that point you just get a studio. I don't think it's worth even if you take away the 16 gigs of memory and knock the cores down, you're still at $3,799. I don't know. Plus the 10 gig Ethernet already comes in the machine at the studio level. So very interesting, turn of events with the Mac Mini. I'm just happy that Apple showed signs of lower pricing, because I think that's, in this economy we're in right now, that's a struggle for a lot of people. And I think we're going to see that with the iPhone coming out soon. But that wasn't the only product that was announced. Ladies and gentlemen, we have brand new 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. They have put the M2 chip inside there. Some of the minor things they did add was a better HDMI. They went to the 2.1, which will allow for a better hertz, like 8K, 60, hertz. They got, 4K, 120 hertz. So you have a lot more power coming out of the HDMI. They also allowed Wi-Fi 6, which is great if you have a router that supports that. Super fast Wi-Fi in there. 5.3 Bluetooth has now been arriving on there. So internally, those are the differences. Beyond that, adding a little more battery life because of the power of the M2 Pro. So this was a nice change. What was interesting about this announcement when it came to there's a thing going around on the web where they actually looked at the web link of this video that Apple made. And in there, it said 2022 somewhere in the URL. Wow. So which tells you that this was planned to happen. Yeah, but it's very clear that the chip issue played a role in this. So I thought it was very interesting how someone found that, and that so it was very clear we were supposed to have an October event. And I don't think Apple can announce these new MacBook Pros that are already on the market, by the way, and just tell them, hey, all these little things are being added in there, because what's going to happen, Frank, if it's announced in October, it's not coming out till January. What's going to happen with their Mac sales?
Oh, yeah, the old ones are going to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the old ones are not going to be sold.
Right.
No one's going to buy them. So Apple was strategic in this and not revealing this till they were ready. And in a way, they made more sales on the older products that they're going to eventually get rid of. Yep. So look out for them on the refurbished site. They'll definitely probably be there.
The only other marketing strategy, I guess, that they could use would be to announce these, and then the older models reduce their price to give somebody the option of, you can have the older model with the older chips at a reduced price.
I don't think there was enough of a difference to help with the confusion of that, though. I think that would have been way too hard for people to understand. There's between an M1 and an M2. But let's talk about the comparison because that's a big thing. So the M2 Pro, let's talk about some of the differences from the M1 MacBook Pro. So there was a 10 core and a 12 core in the current version that just came out. And back with the M1 Pro and Max, it was an 8 and 10 core. As far as the storage, nothing has changed with that. But the RAM in this new MacBook Pro can go up to 96 gigs of RAM.
Yeah.
Which is crazy compared to 64.
Yeah.
And the graphics chip from a 38 to it was a 32 goes up to a 38. The neutral engine stays the same because it's the same chip, real in essence. So those are the big differences in the quality. So Apple has stated that the M2 Pro gives 20% faster CPU and 30% faster GPU performance than the M1 Pro. And the M2 Pro neural engine has seen a 40% increase over its predecessor.
So let me ask you this. You just bought a new MacBook Pro, right?
I did. I bought it last year.
So would you have gone to the highest level on this mad dog here?
Dude, you have got to be kidding me. There is no way I would have done that.
Oh,
I don't need 96 gigs.
96 gig. Can you imagine, man?
I stuck with the 32. I didn't go with the 64 memory. So I stuck with the 32 because remember, when I had the Max chip, there was no other way to go up than that. That was it. So
right.
There's no other engine to choose to increase to at the time. In this one, it's the same deal. The Max, you can't go more than what the Max offers. That's what it offers. Right. And then the memory was an added option. And at the time, I had 64 32. There was no 96 model. But 96 gigs jumps it up $800. So from 32 to 64 was $400, and now it goes to $800.
I mean, you would have to be doing, as a filmmaker, you would have to be.
I would need like 8 streams of like the same 4K video going at the same time.
It's something that you could only dream about before.
Well, let's dream about the price, Frank. How much you think this maxed out? It's an M2 Max. Is maxed out with 96 gigs with 8 terabytes. What does that cost you?
That's got to be $8,000.
That's actually too high. It's $64.99.
$64.99. Oh, it's a steal then.
Yeah.
A bargain.
How dare we not get that computer? Let's go out there. Hey, you can afford that.
Don't forget,
some Apple stock.
If you use your Apple card, you get 3% back.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, Frank, while I'm talking, look up 3% of $64.99, all right, while we're doing that. But also, I just want to talk about the pricing while Frank figures that out, that number, so that way you can know what you save on your Apple card, which we're going to talk about the trade-in in a second. So the M2 Pro does start at $19.99 as the starting price for a 10 CPU, 16 GPU, 16 unified memory with a 512 storage. And again, the 14 6-inch was no difference other than battery life, which has improved by another hour, which these already have an amazing strength of battery. So it starts at $19.99 for the 14-inch, and for the 16-inch, the M2 Pro starts at $24.99, and the M2 Max starts at $34.99, in case you need that. Frank, did you get the number?
$389.
$389 you get back in Apple cash. Look at that. So really, the computer is not really that amount of money.
That's right, man.
So, now, there's been a little bit, I don't know if you read this, Frank, but there's a little bit of a conspiracy right now because people went to go trade in their MacBook Pros and a trade-in value, and apparently there's a mass, people are pretty upset because the trade-in value has really dropped up to 66%.
Wow. Well,
yeah, that's a drop. That's a really big drop.
Yeah. How about
why do you think Apple? Why do you think Apple did that?
I don't know.
I'll tell you right now, the MacBook Pro, right now, up to $670 for a trade-in.
Wow. Well, how about our friend out on Sell Your Mac? I wonder if he dropped his prices.
Oh, I'm sure that's not. I wonder if they changed things based on that. But let's get an instant quote from him. Why not? Too bad. The only problem is I don't know if he's going to find my product. But let's do the specs right now from our good friends at sellyourmac.com. Definitely check him out. We had him on here, so I wanted to let's give him some love and definitely go out there. And let's see here. He's going to give me $1,530.
Well, now you know what you paid for it, right?
Yeah.
But that's still higher than $670.
And that's with the discount bite I add you.
Yes.
My computer basically cost $3,000 at the end of the day. And so half my value would be returned if I was to trade in right now.
Yeah. But that's, I don't want to say that's fair, but I mean, I know it's a devastating loss, but that's kind of the same thing you do with your car. You know, we buy these things thinking, you know, to us, they're worth so much more. And then when you try to resell it on the market, it just isn't. So,
well, the controversy is why Apple is giving so little back when a company like sellyourmac.com is giving so much more.
Yeah.
So that's just a really strange, interesting thing.
Well, I don't know. You'd have to talk to somebody at corporate to send them a note and say, hey, how come?
All right, I'll send him a note. So,
talk to Tim, see what he says.
Well, speaking of Tim wasn't done making announcements because we had one today that we actually have on our YouTube channel. We talked a little bit of detail in it, but we wanted to talk about it here because Apple has brought back the HomePod. That's right. The HomePod second generation has been released. Yep. We kind of speculated
this.
Well, I'm sure I knew you would be. It was so interesting because the market, the aftermarket for the first gen HomePod shot up like crazy because no one thought this was coming back out. And I think people realized that this product is good. And the sound is great. I have two in my house right now working with an Apple TV. The sound is unbelievable on this machine. It works seamlessly.
The minis or the original?
No, the first gens, yeah.
Okay.
It works flawlessly regarding playback from my television. I use an Apple TV 4K. I have YouTube TV, so I have no cable whatsoever. It's been a great transition going from my television with DirecTV to now going to the HomePod for all my audio needs when it comes directly from the television. So I was very happy they announced this. Now, it was stopped in 2021. It came out now with a $299 price. What's changed a little bit in this one is that it has a single 4-inch woofer paired with 5 tweeters. That's down from 7 for the original model. A total of 5 microphones down from 7. So I'm assuming that can only mean that they improved. They can get the same quality out there. They have 2 speakers. Obviously, they could be arranged in a stereo pair. This new model are built with temperature and humidity sensors that could be triggers for smart home. So similar, you could tell Ask Siri, what's the weather in my house, and it would understand that. Right away. So there is a software update coming later in the spring that will allow you to use the built-in microphone to listen for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms to notify you if it hears anything. So, Frank, what are your thoughts on the HomePod coming out? If there's any new features on it that you really like, or do you think that it's really just not about that? It's really just about the sound?
Well, for me, it's more about the sound. I mean, I have 2 of the originals, and
you're a music guy. For everyone who doesn't know, he's a drummer. He's a musician.
I love them. They are good, rich bass, nice, crisp, clear highs. Of course, they respond to Siri and everything. I have my TV like you going through them, and the only downside that a lot of people said was the price. But I think we talked about in an earlier podcast, was that these speakers, the HomePods, are more for the audiophile than the average person that wants speakers just around their house, that kind of thing. These are to a higher level, but I'm glad they're back.
I'd be very curious to hear this. If there is a sound difference, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of videos out there that will compare that.
So these are using the Apple Silicon. So
so they're using an S7 chip, which is directly from the Apple Watch 7. So in case people didn't know that. So it was using I think an A7 chip before, or an 8.8 chip, and now it's going to the S7 chip, which is interesting how they used an S7. I'm guessing that's the sensors. I don't know what the the story of that is. But just to show a comparison between HomePod 1 and HomePod 2, the stereo pairing, by the way, which is an interesting thing, which I don't know why, but you can't studio pair your HomePod 1s to the HomePod 2s.
It's got to be a hardware incompatibility.
Well, but that's something you think they would try to figure out.
Well, I mean, that is unfortunate, but I don't know what you can do about it. Maybe they'll buy back the ones and you can buy 4 twos.
I'm sure the Apple trade-in value won't be there for that.
Yeah.
The biggest difference too with the HomePod 1 and HomePod 2, as far as like anything, the only thing that's like a little different from the two is the real-time tuning. They have advanced computational audio with system sensing for real-time tuning, where this one has just computated audio. So it's like I don't know what the difference for that is, but there is something different about the real-time tuning in it. But that's really it. And as far as like the HomePod Mini goes, it's great to have somewhere else, but it can't take over your sound for your entire television. I don't think it's loud enough for it. With that. So those are all the announcements that happened, Frank. Definitely a surprise. I mean, maybe when this podcast goes up, they'll announce something else. Just to piss us off.
Do you remember the price of the HomePod 1?
Originally it was $399 when it came out. It then went down to $349. Then it quickly went down to $349, and then eventually $299. So
these are $299.
Yep, I think the price point still is going to deter a lot of people. I don't think the $299 price tag, because here's the thing, for the real experience of the HomePod, you got to get two, and as a stereo pair. You think Apple would just say, you know what, if you buy two, you get a discount or $100 off, to say, hey, you can get two HomePods for $500. That sounds so much better than buying an individual one at $299.
Yep.
So that would be I think that'd be a great way for Apple to market them as stereo pairs, and that's how they best work. And honestly, believe it or not, I had a HomePod that did break. It didn't work anymore. It wouldn't actually. I had to get it replaced. Thank God it was under the first year. But ever since that point, I never had a problem with the HomePod.
No, mine have worked pretty good. I can't complain. And
they just sit there. What are they supposed to do? I mean, there's a little bit of a size difference. I know on the new ones. Apparently, they're like a little bit smaller, but not noticeable to probably if you were 10 feet away.
Yeah.
So I'm very nice announcements. I think the idea of the Mac Mini going down to $599 was great. I love the added bonus features that they're doing with the MacBook Pro. I'm very curious to see the results of testing from people who really use it and see how different it's going to be on there. And I'm just glad the HomePod's back. At least it's an option. I don't think you should run out and buy that. I mean, it's not going to be available until February 3rd. And if you want to buy the new Mac Mini...
for Valentine's Day, you can buy it for Valentine's Day for your wife.
All wives really enjoy... Instead of having flowers, they would rather have a $299 HomePod in their house.
Maybe they should come in a red version.
That's stupid. So the color changed from space gray to midnight. They call it midnight now.
Yes.
White and midnight. So, okay, Apple with your naming schemes. Anything to wrap up this episode with, Frank? Any final thoughts before we head out for the night?
What do you think? Now, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, you remember years ago, we used to have a 17.
Oh, yeah.
So how are you feeling about this 16?
16 is perfectly fine. There would be no reason to get a 17-inch at all. I would much rather see an iMac that's 27 inches than to see 17 inches on a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you why, because one of the things that at my job where I work as an IT, we have to refresh our Macs this year. And the big deterrent of getting an iMac is the 3 inches that are not there on that screen. That people like a big size screen for their computers. There's a reason why there's no 21-inch anymore. 21 is too small now. We're so used to having these TVs being so big that you can't go to something small anymore. So Apple coming out with a 24-inch screen was like the middleman, but I think for businesses, they don't want that. I don't think they want that iMac. And that proves it with ourselves not liking it. Now, one of the things I had to do was a Geekbench test to see how the Mac Studio compared to the iMacs that we currently have, which are the old Intel models. And the Studio just blows it away to the point where it's too much. It's not necessary.
Okay.
So when this refresh occurred, I was like, oh, thank God, because now I get to redo the benchmarks and see what they are for the M2 Mac Mini. And I guarantee that we're going with a Mac Mini now. More specifically, I think a Pro, because you could have multiple displays. There's more USB ports on there. Personally, I don't think it makes a difference. I think I'm trying to save the university money. But the one thing they do want to do as far as display goes, they want to get studio displays. And I'm really surprised by that. Yeah.
Wow.
So the studio display is going to cost more than the computer.
I was just going to say, why don't you see if you can squeeze in a budget for a couple and we can, tell them you want to test. You need two to test.
Well, there's a budget for how much you could spend on the system.
Yeah.
They have a limit. They have a limit test.
Sure.
We're under that anyway, even with the, we're pushing it. And I'd rather find a display that has a webcam, that has speakers, that I feel is much better than what the studio offers, because it's just too much money. That thing should have been $1,000.
Yeah.
Well,
I bought this BenQ for $350, 32-inch.
Do you have speakers on it? Do you have a webcam built into it?
It does have speakers on it. They're not the best, but it does have speakers on it. And the webcam, I use my iPhone.
Right. Yeah, that's the argument we're having right now, because we're going to have to refresh our Macs, and they've been around for like 4 or 5 years.
I've been reading Logitech makes a very nice webcam.
I mean, they have the LG displays too from the Apple used to have on their site. So I don't know. We'll have to figure that out. But I can tell you that I think the M2 Mac Mini is going to replace the iMacs that we have, which I think is great. But again, it's amazing how 3 inches does make a difference with the iMac.
Yep.
But yeah, Apple has to. I think that's like, if there's something to look forward to in 2023, is that the iMac needs to be refreshed and has to be 27 inches big. They can keep the 24 in there, but they definitely need a 27.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Xavier, for sponsoring us today. We always do appreciate your non-sponsorship. But Frank, thanks for having a podcast with me.
Always a pleasure.
The name change. Yes, and check out all of our videos on our YouTube channel. Right now, we're Apple One-to-One. So Frank just came out with a video, which I have never used before, talking about how to use the stock function inside of Numbers. If you want to go into depth a little bit about that, Frank, because I think it's something I have never learned about. And, being a stock guy myself, I enjoyed that video.
Well, one of the things that a lot of people have been asking me is, like, there are stock apps where they track different stocks, but, they want to kind of plot out if they purchased X number and so on and so forth. So I came up with this spreadsheet where you can use the stock function and it will go out to Yahoo Finance and pull information. Like, for example, if you put the symbol in, it'll go out and it'll pull in the company name that you can put in your spreadsheet. It'll take the current price. It'll pull in the 52-week high, the 52-week low, the PE ratio, a lot of important stock information. But what's nice about it is every time you open your spreadsheet, it refreshes automatically.
Right.
And I think next week we're going to post the video on how to incorporate that spreadsheet into a keynote, so that if you're giving a presentation, it will automatically go out and refresh that data for you. So you're always dealing with current data.
I was planning on doing it this week, but we already had a lot of announcements happen, and we had to make a podcast because of everything going on. So yeah, we will definitely have a video next week that follows up on the video that's already out there. So definitely check it out. I also have a Pages video on how to use the file save move feature, so you can check that out. I also started Keynote, which is great. We definitely want to get Keynote in there so we can represent all of iWork out there. But thank you guys very much for joining us for our Apple One-to-One. We do appreciate it. If you still see Think Different Podcasts, because we went with a name change. But definitely support us on our Facebook, on our Instagram, and on our Twitter. All of our links are in the notes below. Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate everything, and I love every single one of you.
Peace out.
Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe so you can see all our training videos as well as links to download our podcast.